Yep. The
Okay.
NBA trade deadline is over, and now it's time to assess the aftermath. And to help us do that this morning, I've invited Paul McGaughey, a senior sports writer from CBC Sports, to join us this morning. Paul, good to see you, and we're excited to talk some NBA basketball with you this morning.
All right, sounds good.
So, Paul, when we look at what happened or what didn't happen in the trade deadline, obviously the biggest thing this trade deadline period was not moving Carmelo Anthony. He's got to stay with the Knicks and deal with what Phil Jackson has put him through all season. So can you tell me about your thoughts on why Carmelo wasn't traded and what that means for the Knicks, Carmelo, and the rest of the league?
Sure. So I think one of two things happened. Either one, he wasn't willing to waive his no trade clause and was either being stubborn or honestly believed that like he could make the playoffs with the Knicks and have some success, or two, no one wanted to acquire him, especially mid-season.
And what do you think that means for the future of the Knicks and keeping Carmelo on the roster?
I don't know if that's a good look for them. It hasn't worked so far. And at this point, he might actually be getting in the way of them building around Porzingis.
And secondly, the biggest thing we heard during the trade season was about DaMarcus Cousins and him wanting to stay in Sacramento and feeling betrayed that he got traded. So tell me about your thoughts on what happened with DaMarcus Cousins.
Well, I think that was a trade that was hard to comprehend for a lot of people. And you probably saw that like in 2K17, that trade wouldn't even be allowed. So, that raised a lot of questions right there. I think this is a move that we probably won't fully understand maybe until like a year or two down the road. But as for New Orleans, it definitely gives them enough or like a nice front court tandem. But I don't know if that's going to be enough for them to make the playoffs.
And just tell me, do you think Sacramento got shortchanged with what they gave up for Cousins? Or what they got in return, sorry?
I think most people probably see it that way. I think they seem to like the deal. For some reason, their owner is obsessed with Buddy Hield. So from that sense, they seem pretty happy to have Hield and then also just to have DaMarcus Cousins, out of their system.
And tell me, I know that you're located in Toronto, and certainly the Raptors were active before the trade deadline and getting both Serge Ibaka and P.J. Tucker. Tell me about how those additions will affect the overall makeup of the team.
That's going to be huge for the Raptors. Like they addressed like exactly what they needed. They needed a legit starting four, which they get in Ibaka, and they just needed someone tough to play the 3 spot and play some defense, and they get that with Tucker. So I think they've set themselves up really well to go on a nice run for the rest of the season and into the playoffs.
And tell me about what do you think this means for their playoff future and how far the Raptors might go?
Well, I think it's huge for their playoff future. Especially this season. I don't know if anyone's going to be able to beat the Cavs in a 7-game series, but I definitely think this gives the Raptors a chance to get back to the conference finals.
And tell me, what happened or what didn't happen? Were you surprised about the lack of movement by other teams throughout the trade deadline period, or no?
I don't know if I'm surprised. You always hear people say how tough it is to make deals at the deadline. It's often easier to do it, on draft day or in the summer. And that's sometimes where you see the bigger deals and the more complicated deals take place.
And what players do you think were you surprised that weren't moved that you thought might be moved during the deadline?
I'm not sure. Maybe a Brook Lopez with the Nets because it looks like they're tearing it down and are going to go through a rebuild. So maybe I'm surprised they weren't a little bit more active. Maybe like Chicago and Indiana not doing anything with George and Butler. Those would probably be the 3 for me.
And tell me, the only big thing we saw during the trade deadline was the Dallas Mavericks getting New Orleans Noel. Tell me what you think about what the Mavericks gave up in that deal and how that may affect their overall makeup.
Well, I think that was a nice deal for the Mavericks. In my opinion, they gave up nothing, like very little. Andrew Bogut on a team that's not going to make the playoffs or is going to struggle to make the playoffs isn't really a good fit. So for them to have Nerlens Noel, who they can look at for a couple years now, he's going to help them a lot, I think.
And tell me, how do you think the lack of movement will help the Warriors and Cavaliers get back to the finals?
You know what? I'm not sure. Like, I think there was one maybe kind of under the radar move that Houston made where they picked up Lou Williams from the Lakers. And I think that's going to be really, really big for them and just gives them another 3-point shooter. So if I'm the Warriors or the Cavs, I'm thinking that there's a couple teams out there that are going to make a pretty good run.
And finally, what do you think what we can look forward to as far as the whole landscape of the league moving forward during the duration of the rest of the season?
I think it's going to be really exciting in both conferences. If you look at kind of the race for the bottom playoff spots, kind of 6 through 8, there's a lot of room there for teams to move up and down. And then the same with the top 4 seeds in each conference. I think there's going to be a good battle, kind of at least for the 2, 3, and 4 spots there.
Fantastic, Paul. We want to thank you for your time and for joining us to talk hoops this morning on the Two Man Advantage podcast. Thank you and have a good day, buddy.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.